Okay, guys, so in this week of the ME Habits program, the 12-week Train Your Brain, Transform Your Body program, we are going to be talking about habits and specifically mindfulness around habits. Now, the term mindfulness is this woo-woo new age term that a lot of people get turned off by because they think it's all about sort of sitting up on a mountain meditating and saying Om. It's really not. Mindfulness really is about getting in touch with the inner feelings that you're having and why you're doing what you're doing. And let me be very clear about this. If you want change, if you are really wanting to make change in your life, researchers have shown conclusively that mindfulness training is the absolute best way to do it. If you're going to do this, if you're going to be successful in this 12-week program to transform your body by training your brain to behave a particular way, you cannot do it without learning and practicing mindfulness. So this week is going to be all about mindfulness, and you have to really put in the work to learn this. So let's all agree, make a commitment with yourself now. You're really going to pay attention to this because this is absolutely key. So we need to get mindful about habits. The first thing you need to understand about habits is to understand that the brain makes habits for a very specific reason. It likes to conserve energy. Anytime you have to make a decision, anytime you make a choice, anytime you do any kind of self-editing, anytime that you feel guilty or any of these kinds of things, it uses energy. And what researchers have shown is the more self-editing you do, the more choices you make, the more stress that you're under, the more sort of mental activity you have to engage in, the faster your willpower battery or self-control battery gets drained. And so the brain has this nifty little way of making it so you do not have to make as many decisions. It forms habits, these sort of automatic decisions that go on in the background that you may be unaware of. The problem is these automatic decisions that your brain is forming to save energy can sometimes not be serving you and can end up draining your battery later on and making you less likely to have self-control. Some of you might be wondering, why am I talking about self-control and willpower as a battery? Because researchers have shown conclusively that self-control and willpower is not something you have or you don't have. It's something that you train for, that you can build as a skill. Some people have these little tiny batteries with very little charge in their self-control, and they can't say no, and they always find themselves slipping back on their diet. Others have these very large batteries with lots of charge in the battery, and these are the people who have practiced mindfulness and are able to have these very big, large willpower batteries and self-control batteries with a ton of charge. So let's talk about these habits that the brain likes to form to conserve energy, because if you can construct good habits, if you can build habits, all of a sudden you can have a situation where you're doing things that you thought took a lot of work before or a lot of conscious effort, and now they don't take much effort at all. Like when you go to a restaurant, instead of getting soda or sweet tea, you automatically order water. Or like when you're sitting at home on the couch watching TV, you're not munching on chips and drinking wine, but you're instead, eating some fruit maybe, or not eating at all and drinking water. Okay, so let's go through this really quickly. Here's how habits work. First of all, in your environment, there's something called the habit loop. There will be a trigger or a reminder in your environment, something that's going on around you that triggers or reminds you, the brain, to go ahead and kick in its habit. And that results in a routine. And the brain then is doing this whole routine because it's sort of seeking a reward. That whole thing, the trigger or reminder that results in a routine that you do that creates this reward, creates then a craving that then perpetuates the habit. So I know that's a little abstract, so let's go through it with a sort of detailed example. So you get home from work and you come in the door, turn on the TV, and find yourself evening after evening then going to the cupboard, pulling out a bottle of wine, pouring a glass of wine, going and sitting down and watching TV and munching on chips and wine, or whatever it is that you're doing. And so the reminder is the coming home from work and the turning on of the TV. The routine is pouring the glass of wine and getting the junk food and munching on it. And the reward is what? That's part where mindfulness comes in, because we don't always know what the reward is. But let's assume in this case the reward is relaxation from a long day at work. And you develop then a craving for this routine. You enjoy it. You crave it. Sometimes you might even be like, after a little while, does not serve me. I know it's getting in the way of me losing weight and changing my body, but I can't stop doing it. And that's because the brain has this loop on repeat. It's very difficult to interrupt it. How do you interrupt a habit loop? You interrupt a habit loop by first knowing that you're in a habit loop. You have to catch the habit loop when it happens. You need to catch the trigger, be aware of the routine, and understand the reward. And the only way that you can do that is to practice mindfulness. Neuroscientists talk about humans as if we have one brain but two minds. One mind is unconscious, the other mind is conscious. Habits reside in the unconscious section of the mind. The only way to change them is to get conscious and notice them. And the only way to notice them is to practice mindfulness. Researchers have shown conclusively that people who practice mindfulness, who understand mindfulness, are far better at change, have far bigger willpower batteries, are able to make change and make new habits much more easily. So what I want you to do is focus on this habit loop, the trigger, the routine, the reward, and the craving that develops around it, and understand that everything we're doing this week around mindfulness training is all geared at helping you notice the trigger, understand the routine, and understand the reward. We're going to start with just noticing, not having to do anything, just practice noticing. Practice noticing things like how your shirt feels on your shoulders, how your feet feel inside your shoes, how food smells, tastes, how you react to food. All these sort of things that sort of are underneath your consciousness. And once you become insightful about them and start noticing them, then you can begin to perhaps design another trigger or reminder. Perhaps interrupt the routine or put in another routine, and understand what the reward you are after is, so you can devise other routines and other reminders that deliver you that reward in a way that is not detrimental to your goals. So that's what this week is all about: the habit loop and mindfulness, and how to